For context here, the guy ahead of him has been to 4 Super Bowls, won 3. The guy below him went to a Super Bowl. The guy below him, Lamar Jackson, has 2 MVPs. The guy below him, Matthew Stafford, won a Super Bowl. The guy before, underneath him, has actually never won a playoff game. But regardless, Josh Allen is in at 2. Is this too high?
No, I don't think I think you can argue it for sure. Look, Joe Burrow kind of last year was unanimously, or not unanimously, but largely viewed as the second best. He's hurt too much. Now, if he gets through this year, 16, 17 games, and plays in the playoffs and all that, fine. But right now, he's hurt too much. So I have no problem putting Josh Allen ahead of him.
Okay.
My argument would be this, and I'm not going to argue it too strongly, but I think you can make an argument that Lamar Jackson should be number 2, and here it is. 2 MVPs to 0, and we're not talking about ancient history. We're talking about last year.
Yeah.
He was the MVP, all right? He's never had a receiver like Stephon Diggs, right? Josh Allen has had one of the top receivers for the bulk of his career, and Lamar has never had that. Lamar is as accurate. I mean, their accuracy is similar with both of them. Lamar, I would say, maybe some will disagree, he's the better runner. Even last year when he didn't run as much, he ran for more yards than Josh Allen ever has. He ran for over 800. Josh has never run for 800. Lamar's got the 2 1,000-yard rushing years. Now, we know Josh had a ton of touchdowns, but a lot of those were at the goal line. You could have given it to a running back. I'm just saying.
Oh, now all of a sudden we're discounting
I don't know what you're talking about.
Touchdown.
I'm just stating facts.
Oh, wow.
But my point is that you could certainly argue, and if it's close, why not give it to the guy with the MVP last year? So I think you could have put Lamar.
Yeah, I'll tell you why they didn't give it to the guy with the MVP last year. Because the last time we saw him play, he looked entirely out of sorts. Here's the thing. Now, I understand that there was an odd.
Than Josh.
There was a interesting internet back and forth seemingly between me and Lamar, but. There is no ill will, and he even stated as much in a later tweet after he sent a funny gif of a monkey with a long nose. That's fine. It happens. It was all in good fun. I really like and root for Lamar. But as I said, which spurred that interaction, which I will say here is, if every year of your career, your worst game of the season is your last game of the season and it's a playoff game, that is going to be hard. Forget being the second best quarterback in football. I would be lying if I said I would rather have Lamar than C.J. Stroud. I wouldn't. I would rather have Lamar than Matt Stafford. I wouldn't.
Well, you'd rather have C.J. Stroud than Lamar?
Yes.
We saw them play against each other.
I understand, but twice. I understand that. So like I said, you might disagree. If you are asking me, if I am tied up to a lie detector and I'm like, hey, I need to win a Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes is off the board. Give me your list of quarterbacks. Would I say C.J. Stroud's name before Lamar's? I would. Would I say Matt Stafford's name before Lamar's? I would. Would I say Joe Burrow's name before Lamar's? Of course I would. Would I say Josh Allen? For as much as criticisms of Josh Allen I've had, of course I would.
Of course.
Yes, because it can't be that every year of your career, your team's worst offensive performance and your worst individual performance is in your playoff game. Once that's happened 4 times, it's not a coincidence.
Nick,
it's a structural problem.
He is on the team and has been on teams. No great receivers. No great running backs.
Okay, so
And he is carrying them to 75% wins in the regular season. And fairly, at least this year, they got to the conference championship.
So I have 2 questions about the receivers thing. One is, are we going to retroactively change any opinion on that if Hollywood Brown is unbelievable this year? Are we? Is that going to be Hollywood Brown, who seemingly wanted out of both?
That's such an asinine statement to make, because you're talking about now having Andy Reid, the offensive genius. Please tell me the offensive genius is that Lamar Jackson was able to play with Hollywood Brown. I'll wait.
Baltimore now.
On the level of Andy Reid.
Now maybe that was
He wasn't great in Arizona either. I mean, if he's great with Mahomes.
But again, the question is that is who you're chasing. That is who you're competing with. But the other part of it is, it's not for lack of trying. Since drafting Lamar, no team has spent more top 100 pick draft capital on receivers than the Ravens. So maybe they're bad at picking the position, or maybe
Like who's the great receiver there?
Well,
and I like Flowers. I'm
we'll
not
see
saying
what Zay turns into.
But I'm just saying so far he hasn't had a great receiver.
Right, and I'm not saying he's bad, obviously, but if you're asking me, my life's on the line, this team has to win the Super Bowl, I can pick any quarterback in football. There's a lot of names I'm going to say before I say Lamar's because of the track record of it. I don't think it's on.
Okay, so this is such a funny thing because, again, Nick loves to then, he made fun of Brew for saying, oh, Josh Allen and the goal line touchdowns or whatever, but now he's going back and forth with Lamar, where before he had Lamar as an all-time great. He did a QB, mountain pyramid, whatever, where he listed Lamar Jackson as an all-time great, and now Stroud or Stafford. And again, this is what Nick does. Like, it's such a fascinating thing. He brings down all the quarterbacks that Patrick Mahomes beats. And it's just like, again, under his logic, then Patrick Mahomes is not beating great quarterbacks. There's no other way to spin it. There's just no other way to spin it. I mean, he thinks Josh Allen is overrated. He thinks Josh Allen is severely overrated. That is his fact. That is what he believes. He went on a whole rant about Lamar Jackson right here, and he thinks Tua is like a bottom 10, bottom 15 quarterback. And he thinks Brock Purdy is a bottom 15 quarterback. What do all those quarterbacks have in common? That's who Patrick Mahomes beat last year to win the Super Bowl. So I guess then Patrick Mahomes is just, beating scrubs. But this was supposed to be a Josh Allen segment, but it's clearly more about Lamar Jackson. So I don't even know why the title even says Josh Allen ranked, as second best QB. And then it just turned into a debate of how good is Lamar Jackson. So I'll treat it as such about Lamar Jackson. Listen, Lamar Jackson is the perfect example. I think it's the perfect example of when we see a quarterback who has all this raw talent, raw athleticism, and is fast and twitchy and can do so many different things, right? Has a massive toolbox compared to other quarterbacks, right? Compared to a more traditional pocket passer. And Lamar Jackson is a perfect example of what happens when you go to that team when you don't have good, sound, consistent offensive weapons and a good, sound offensive coordinator around him. I understand he hasn't had trash coordinators. I'm not trying to pull down, say that Lamar Jackson has just had like trash, but he's the perfect example of what Patrick Mahomes could have been if he did not go to Andy Reid. I've been banging this drum for months and months and months and months, years, essentially. I've just only been on the YouTube for, a handful of months. The importance of coaching and how when you are a quarterback, when you can do virtually anything on the field, which is what Lamar Jackson is, right? That how important it is to have a coach that can mold you. And there's not a doubt in my mind. I think Patrick Mahomes would have been better than Lamar Jackson if Patrick Mahomes went to the Ravens or, because I just think that Patrick Mahomes is fundamentally a better quarterback. But make no mistake about it, Patrick Mahomes would look more like Lamar Jackson if he didn't have Andy Reid or Shanahan or, again, another great elite offensive head coach. He would look more like Lamar Jackson and less like the Patrick Mahomes that we know. There's not a doubt in my mind. And it seems like a lot of Patrick Mahomes fans just can't accept that. They just want to bring down their coach. And then again, I always ask them, then why is Andy Reid just the highest paid coach? Right? Like, why do the Kansas City Chiefs pay him all that money? Is it just because he's just a big old jolly guy? Because he can actually not fall down when Travis Kelce pushes him? Like, which is it? Patrick Mahomes has had the consistent offensive genius mind in his ear from day one, from before he ever even took a snap. None of these other quarterbacks have that. None of them. So you can maybe make the argument for Joe Burrow. with his offensive head coach, maybe. And so Lamar Jackson hasn't had that, right? He's had multiple offensive voices in his ear. Josh Allen, of course. Justin Herbert. The other guys like a CJ Stroud, he's only played 1 year, so that doesn't really matter, quite honestly. Jalen Hurts, multiple. Dak Prescott, multiple. Like, all of these guys have had multiple. Stafford. And it just matters. That consistency matters. It matters. That's why these teams, when they have a good coach, they don't let them go, right? They keep paying them and paying them and paying them because they don't want them to go, because it's not easy. They don't drop coaches like they drop players, which should say a lot. When a coach starts to get really expensive, like a McVay, like a Shanahan, like anyone else, they don't say, all right, we'll move on from this head coach. We got Patrick Mahomes and this team. Like, we'll move on from Andy Reid. He's getting too costly. We'll get another guy. We can pay him like half the amount of money. They don't do that. But they do that with wide receivers. They do that with quarterbacks. They do that with running backs, defensive linemen, O-line. They do it with everyone but head coaches. That should show you how important the head coach is. And Lamar Jackson just hasn't had that. And I don't blame Lamar Jackson for what happened in the last playoffs. Did he look great? Absolutely not. I'll admit that without a doubt. But it was a terrible game plan. A terrible game plan. A terrible game plan going up against the best defense in the NFL, which was the Kansas City Chiefs. That set up for a disaster. Like, there was nothing for Lamar Jackson to do. And yeah, he got flustered. He looked bad. Just like Patrick Mahomes looked bad against the Raiders or the Jets. Like, that's what happens. Good defenses and a poor game plan, or a poorly executed game plan at the least, because I don't think Andy Reid came with a bad game plan. That's what happens. Quarterbacks they can't do anything. A quarterback can only be as good as the players around him in the game plan. Seriously. Because otherwise, you get what you see with Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. Where it's just like Lamar's trying to do anything he can, but there's nothing for him to do. He can no one's open, he can't throw the ball. If there's nowhere for him to run, he can't run. And then you do start forcing the ball in spots because you got to do something. You can't just snap it and hold on for it. And then you do make a terrible throw, an interception, and then it just all compounds. So I've said this after I saw that game. And the whole time I was watching that game, I just kept thinking, the Baltimore Ravens did not put Lamar Jackson in a position to succeed. And then the next day on that Monday, that's what a lot of people were talking about. They all said, what was that game plan? What was that? And it was very reminiscent of when Josh Allen and the Bills went up against the Cincinnati Bengals in that snowstorm. The Bengals had a true offensive game plan, whereas the Bills just said, all right, Josh, get out there, big guy. Bring it home for us. Yeah, it's a great game plan. So I don't really know what happened exactly last year. There was a few rumors that the quarterback room wanted to really prove that they could win and throw the ball because they had been running so much and they wanted to break that stereotype. Whether that's true or not, I have zero idea. Zero idea. But you know what? In 2024, it wouldn't shock me because it was a bizarre game plan. They completely abandoned their run when they were running the ball all day, every single game. Then they get to the playoffs, their biggest game, and they decide to do the opposite. And again, it was not because of the Kansas City Chiefs, just great defense. They just took away the run, and now they could just do nothing. That's not what happened. They abandoned the run from the jump. I don't know if they tried to get too cute and be like, hey, they're going to expect us to run, and now we're going to throw. I don't know what it was, but whatever it was just bad football. And yet they still almost won. So I don't know. I get that ranking with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and all of that. I think what this list just proves, though, because they were saying this guy went to a Super Bowl. Let me see if I can get back to it real quick. Where is it? There it is. This guy went to a Super Bowl, and this guy went to a Super Bowl. This guy has an MVP. It just shows you that reaching Super Bowls or getting MVPs even only matter so much. You have to look at what each individual player has from a player standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. who he's losing against, his health, what he does on the field, like his pure athletic ability. Like, there's just so many factors. You can't just say, well, this guy has 2 MVPs. This guy has 2 Super Bowls. There's a lot of Super Bowl winners who are nowhere near as good as some of these non-Super Bowl winners. It's just a fact. So I just think, listen, there's a lot of people that think Patrick Mahomes is better than Tom Brady right now. Well, Tom Brady has a lot more Super Bowls than him. So you can't just go by those accolades. And I think, and I've said this before as well, that the eye test, trust your eyes. Stop digging so much into the stats because they can be wildly misleading. Wildly misleading. And sometimes you do have to rely on the eye test. And it's also what you expect, what you saw the player did in the past, and what you expect them to be able to continue to do. It is hard to rank Joe Burrow so high because you're unsure what is he going to continue to be able to do because he keeps getting injured. So to me, Josh Allen is definitely number 2 on this list because of what I've seen him do, what I believe him to be able to do, what I think he'll be able to do into the future, as well as what he's been able to do with the Buffalo Bills, that roster, the various rosters over the years, and the various coaches over the years. So to me, that's where that makes the most amount of sense. And I would still put Joe Burrow up there because when Joe Burrow is at his healthiest, he's shown to also be able to get the job done. And that is where Lamar Jackson comes in. And I do understand what Nick is saying. I don't think it's as blunt as if you play your worst game at the end of the season, that means you're not good enough. I disagree because that implies that Lamar Jackson just can't handle it, or Lamar Jackson can't beat the best teams, and I don't believe that to be true. I reject that. I think that's more of an issue with the Baltimore Ravens than anything else, quite frankly, than 100% on Lamar. But with that said, Lamar has shown to not be able to overcome that, or at least make it closer than it would be. If the Chiefs had a better offense last season, that game wouldn't have been as close, right? If their offense was better, they would have won, and it wouldn't have been as close of a game. I think that's a pretty safe bet to say. So, their offense struggled all year for the most part, so it's not a surprise that they didn't put up points. You can't credit that to the great defense of the Baltimore Ravens because lots of teams were able to do that. The Eagles had a terrible defense, and they shut down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs as well. So, what are we talking about here? But yeah, besides that, I'm not going to unpack this list anymore, quite honestly, because some of it's a little kooky. Putting Jordan Love behind Trevor Lawrence and Kirk Cousins, and that doesn't really make sense. Dak Prescott, who here is going to take Dak Prescott over Jordan Love or even Jared Goff? You think Dak Prescott's just a notch below CJ Stroud? Come on, get out of here. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the whole debate? I guess this real question ends up being is who's the second best quarterback? Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, or Lamar Jackson? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.